She was actually going to be the one to host the live, but TikTok has, in my opinion, removed certain features from certain creators, and
Right.
through that combination, I think it's made it very tricky for us to be on live at the same time together. But we figured it out. We are here, and Censored actually has prepared a few questions for me. I'll let her briefly introduce herself. As she speaks, will you guys let me know in the comments if you can hear her okay? And whenever you're ready.
All right. So we have here with us congressional hopeful Shauna Rudd, running for Kentucky's 6th congressional district, which is central Kentucky, that includes cities such as Lexington, Richmond, and Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
She's hoping to unseat Republican Andy Barr.
That's right.
I hear an echo. Should I cancel the live for myself?
Yes, because I don't hear an echo. I hear you really well. Can somebody in the comments let me know? Can you hear Censored okay? Like, can you understand what she's saying? Looking at you, Aunt Susan. I know you're here. Can you hear her okay? Okay. She said yes, so I don't think there's an echo on our end.
Oh, okay. That's fine then. Then I don't hear.
Okay.
All right. So let me just try to send. Okay. Couple more. I'm just going to send to a few more followers. Because I don't know if anybody knows now where.
I'll share a few too. Somebody said it is a little echoey. Is it doable?
Okay.
Is it bearable?
Yeah. Yes.
I'll send a few out too.
So then in that case, I'll just get off of here. Okay. So we're good now.
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, tell us a little about yourself in your own words.
Let's see. So a little bit about me. As you said, I'm from Kentucky. I have lived in Lexington for about 6 years. I grew up in a rural community in eastern Kentucky, Breathitt County. I have my bachelor's and my master's degree in social work. I'm actually a licensed clinical social worker. My day job is I'm actually a psychotherapist, a mental health counselor. So I'm not a career politician. I have never ran for any kind of office. I think I am a political person. But I guess whenever I was probably a junior in college was when the murder of George Floyd happened. And that was when I started to dip my toes into the protest activism space. And I consider myself a little bit like a baby community organizer. I do some work within my community. But yeah, no real, like, again, I've never ran for any kind of office before. I am just a regular person who was really frustrated with constantly feeling underrepresented.
Okay. So just for the easier questions, who is Leroy?
That's such a good question. Leroy's actually my dog. He's sleeping. Leroy. But yeah, whenever I started this TikTok, it was years ago, like nobody from my personal account knew it. I didn't want to attach my real name to it just so like clients couldn't find me, or if somebody like professionally searched me, they wouldn't see my TikTok. So I used my dog's name, and his name's Leroy, and he's 10 years old, and he's sleeping and doesn't want to come in here, but he's really cool.
Okay. So then, I'm going to ask you, because I found a post.
Okay.
There is a rumor about you that you make the best vegan lasagna. Is that true or not?
It is true. I make amazing from scratch vegan lasagna. It is actually a modified version of Avant-Garde Vegan. He has a YouTube channel, and he was trained in French cuisine. And so you make like a classic French roux. You use like homemade lasagna noodles, and it is really, you like infuse the milk with rosemary and like shallot. Oh, you all, it's great. It's really good.
Okay. Are you a vegan in general, or that was just a recipe that you
it is a good recipe that I still make, but I was actually vegan for 3 years. I'm not currently, I still eat a lot of vegan food, but I was a dedicated vegan for 3 years.
Okay. Okay. So a little bit, harder questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
What or who prompted you to take the step to run for Congress?
What or who prompted me to take the step to run for Congress? I'll tell you who prompted me. Well, I'll tell you both. I'll tell you what prompted me and who gave me the final push. What prompted me was the genocide of the Palestinian people. We have all been watching a genocide unfold for 2 months, and I really struggled emotionally with feeling helpless and feeling like there wasn't anything I could do. And part of how I responded to that was to throw myself into contacting my representatives and contacting representatives that aren't mine. I've contacted representatives from other states who I feel have more power than my own. And I have posted some of those videos onto my TikTok, sort of like a series where I video myself calling my representatives and post it. And Andy Barr is my congressman who I call every day. And there's a video that got pretty popular where his staffer actually refuses to repeat my message back to me. And when I press him on it, he hangs up on me. And that was, of course, really frustrating. It really showed me how little my representatives care about me. And Congress is a really important branch of government. They hold the purse strings of the United States, in my opinion, and my one congressman wasn't listening to me. So I said, well, if you won't talk to me, I think I'll run against you for Congress, and if I win, I'll do a much better job than you. So the genocide of the Palestinian people is the what, and Andy Barr is the who, honestly.
Okay. Do you feel qualified to run for this congressional seat, and if so, why?
Do I feel qualified to run for this congressional seat, and if so, why? Yes, I do feel qualified. I think that part of the dream that we're sold about America is it is a government by the people, for the people, that you don't have to have your doctorate in political science to work for the government, that the government is just regular citizens, that we believe in fair and equal elections, that any citizen who, has the drive and the willpower and is able to acquire the votes can win. And what we have seen through the two-party system is a system that doesn't do that. I've seen myself only this far. There are so many barriers to running for office. My aunt is elected in a local position in my hometown, and it was so difficult for her, just for a local position in local government. It's really, I am as qualified, I believe, as anyone who is in Congress. And I think there is sort of a myth that you have to have years and years and years of political experience and have went to law school to serve as a politician, and I don't buy into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have people from all walks of life in these offices, and some of them have, not the highest amount of education. They have different jobs, and so yeah.
Absolutely. And there's more than one type of education. Formal education through higher learning institutions is not the only kind of valuable education life experience there is.
Yes. A specific question, and I kind of randomly, I'm going to ask random questions.
Go for it.
I'll try to fine-tune it. I am neurodivergent, so bear with me.
Yes, a lot of us are. This is my day job.
Recently, California Congressman Ro Khanna, or Khanna, basically started a resolution. The resolution is called H Resolution, House Resolution 938, basically. It is a comprehensive, it's comprehensive government reform, such as putting, hold on, I'm just gonna check. Term limits.
Mm-hmm.
Term limits. Then also, preventing lobbying and also I believe, let me see, lobbying money to individuals. Limits on the amount of money the individuals and organizations can donate. This also goes hand in hand with Citizens United.
Yep.
However, this is a resolution which has to restart in 2 years. So if it were to get passed, it would have to be extended. Would you first of all support House Resolution 938? Based on what I have said, of course, you will have to look at it.
Right.
And would you consider it being, trying to get a bill passed and not a resolution that you will have to extend?
Oh, yes. Wow, that's a really good question. So we're talking about California Democrat Ro Khanna's House Resolution. Was it 938? Is that right?
Yes.
938. I actually have a friend who had sent me this resolution because they knew that I would be interested in it, and they're very knowledgeable. And so I have not read through the entirety of the bill yet, but this person who I trust greatly with probably better ability to read through a bill than me at this point, said, there's nothing funny in here. This is truly it seems to reflect what he says. He truly wants to limit certain people's term limits, end lifelong terms, and PAC money through corporate lobbying. And from what I can see of the bill, it is absolutely one that I would support, if not one that I would draft myself if it wasn't on the floor. That would be some of my top priorities in Congress, is the corruption and what PAC money has done to Congress. So yes, I know there are two parts to your question. So yes, I would support the resolution. What was the second part?
Would you consider to actually draft the bill and not have it be a resolution that is then basically dependent on it being repassed in 2 years?
Right. So my understanding is that a bill is a little bit more concrete, permanent, and a resolution is a little bit more fluid. There's more opportunities for loopholes. Is that right in your understanding?
Yes. So it's very similar, but one basically requires extensions. The other one can also require extensions, but it can be generally more permanent.
Excellent. All right. Yes, thank you for that. So in that case, yes, I would absolutely want to, because, what happens if we kick the can down the road for 2 years and maybe now, we know the Democrats are really trying to look for a win in 2024 in the presidential election. So let's say that everybody in Congress, as a PR move, says, okay, we're all going to vote yes on this resolution, but then when it's up for extension in 2 years and we're already comfortably has been elected, then we're going to vote no. It's just, do we want this enacted into law or not?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple of basically, hold on. What are the issues for Kentuckians? So I have them starting from 2020 and then going into 2023, and they have shifted somewhat. Like, for example, in 2020, COVID was top first priority.
Right.
And then it went to 39% opioid addiction, drug addiction, 34% unemployment, 24% healthcare, and 22% crime or violence. So that was in 2020. Another, let me see, a report by Kentucky Chamber of Commerce deals with racial inequality.
Heavily segregated area. Yep.
And so just wanted to kind of give you what it was then, and then kind of go for, for example, something specific, 2023.
Oh, there's so many. I
So,
mean, and issues, because there's a lot of issues that are national, right? Like, probably, if my main pillar of my campaign is, it's broad, but it's true, is wealth inequality. And the fact that such a high concentration of wealth sits with such a small number of people in the world, and that trickle down economics, it's not trickled down yet, and we have, an ever shrinking middle class and an ever growing impoverished class. But I do feel like that is a national, if not global, issue. But that is probably the foundational pillar of my campaign. I think almost every problem that we see comes down to greed and wealth inequality. But to speak about Kentucky specifically, the 6th district, in my opinion, is an interesting district. It is very heavily gerrymandered. And so it includes some major cities, like the city I live in, which is Lexington. It includes the capital city, which is Frankfort. Like, you all got to look up a map of this. It's like an arm reaches out and like scoops up just Frankfort and leaves the entire rest of the county out of the district. And we have Richmond, which has the Eastern Kentucky University, so it's a pretty like populated, educated city. And then we also have like Clark County and Montgomery County, which start to get more rural. So I think that the 6th district is unique in the fact that the problems that I experience as a Lextonian is really different than the problems that someone in Mount Sterling, Kentucky are seeing that's more rural. So I live in downtown Lexington, and we do have an issue with like there's nowhere for our homeless people to go, and it's starting to get cold outside, and that's something that I see every day. We have a growing number of people who have to panhandle just in order to have food and to survive. But somebody in Mount Sterling does not see that. And their issues are more along the lines of things like the opioid crisis and not being, their there's not as many doctors in those communities, and they're having to schedule appointments really far out, and it affects their access to health care and mental health services. So, I mean, depending on the area of the district, I think that the issue they are facing is going to look really different.
something that came out of so basically, according to United Way of Creators Cincinnati, there is an article called "A New Survey Finds Kentuckians Overwhelmingly Support Increased Investments to Improve Access to High Quality Childcare Programs."
Yes.
And there are charts in that article that show that it's a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And do you support the implementation or improving access of high quality childcare programs, and what would you possibly envision with that?
Oh, I love this question. This was I love talking about this before I ever thought about running for Congress, because I'm very passionate about this. As a social worker, the issue that I face with so many people is poverty. It's the fact that they don't have enough money and they can't keep their head above water and they have to feed their children. And child care is a humongous barrier to people being able to get themselves out of bad situations. And so not only do I support quality and accessible childcare, but we need to offer that early. I think we need to offer that for children as young as 1. I think we need to do it either subsidized or completely free, because whenever people are able to not have to spend 75% of one of the parents' income on childcare, they are able to go to work and know that their child is taken care of. And I mean, these things that I'm asking for, I know these are not free. So I really like this question specifically, because one of the things I would love to see implemented is in Kentucky, the Kentucky Lottery has, every state's lottery has, certain programs that it benefits. And in Kentucky, the lottery is supposed to fund education. And so if any of my Kentucky people are in here, if you had Keys money to go to college, that money came from the Kentucky Lottery. And I think that we should expand the Kentucky Lottery to include early child care for parents, so that instead of waiting until your child's 5 years old, when they can go to daycare, hopefully preschool, you can, when your child is as young as 1 or maybe even younger, there's child care available to people who need it so that they can work.
Let me see. So I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me see. So first, like a general category, which is it came out of Louisville Courier Journal on May 2023, and it's called Kentucky Ranked Low in the U.S. News Best State Rankings. Here is how the states did. It's an article by Ana Rocio Alvarez Brines. So a couple of statistics that were mentioned is that Kentucky is a top producer of corn, soybeans, hay, wheat, and biggest supplier of bourbon. Just something to and some of the state ranking based on people's opinions. Basically, crime and corrections was 13. Economy number 43, so ranked lower.
Yeah.
Education number 32. I think it was like over 90% of Kentuckians have, education. Fiscal stability for number 45, healthcare number 46, but access to that healthcare is somewhat more limited. Infrastructure 23. Actually, Kentucky is doing pretty good as far as infrastructure.
I will say Kentucky has an amazing highway department. In my opinion, I think we have one of the best highway departments in the country. Truly, we don't have tolls in Kentucky, and our roads maybe like excluding some like roads that are maintained by the county and there's like local issues, like our highways, we get stuff done pretty fast. So I'm gonna give Kentucky a lot of credit for infrastructure, specifically highways.
So they mentioned, like, for example, a percentage, 7.4% of roads are in poor condition versus, which is better than the national average of 19%, and the infrastructure is rated as a 23 out of like 50 states.
Yeah. So average.
Yeah, natural environment was listed as 22 and opportunity as 13. Job growth, on the other hand, was shown as a negative 0.3% with 0.2% net migration. So a lot of people are factoring the economy and the economic prosperity and jobs as, especially in Kentucky, it's like one of the top concerns.
Right.
How would you increase that number basically and decrease the number of migration, the net migration?
Oh, I love this question too. You have such good questions, Century. Well, I'll take it back a little bit. I think maybe in 2010 or 2011, I wrote a letter when I was a college student to the governor at the time, Steve Brashear. And the letter that I wrote him was inspired by a research project I was doing. And I did it about coal mining communities. And in my paper, I kind of outlined some similarities between because at that time, the coal mining industry was starting to leave rural parts of eastern Kentucky. And these industries had financially propped up the communities that we lived in for decades. Like, almost every person, one of their dads, uncles, grandpas, if not all of them, made their money from the coal mining industry. And when that started to shift, as I was in college and people were teaching me about what this meant, I realized that if Kentucky didn't pivot to more sustainable energy practices, that it would be bad. If we tried to cling to coal, that we would be left behind. And there was a community in Wales in, I believe, the 80s that had a very similar thing happen. They had been propped up by coal mining industries. The coal was starting to dry up, and they chose to shift to more sustainable practices. And one thing was the terrain was very similar. A lot of eastern Kentucky is very mountainous, and it actually makes for a great way to have wind energy because it creates wind tunnels through the mountains, as was the truth for the community in Wales. And so they really leaned heavy into let's transition these jobs from these people who work at the coal mines and let's get them into water energy, wind energy, I think they have a nuclear energy plant nearby. Let's get these people into new forms of energy so we can sustain these communities and continue to do that. And the aftercare plan for Kentucky was non-existent. And I don't know that that's as much of a problem in the 6th district where I'm running, maybe like a little seepage into Montgomery Clark. But we have done such a bad job of having jobs in people's communities. I mean, we have the Toyota factory, we have the Amazon plant, and there's people who drive 3-hour round trips a day, you all, to go work at these factories because there's no jobs in their own community. We have done such a poor job of, helping small businesses, family-owned businesses. We don't subsidize small farmers the same way that we've subsidized large corporate farms. You mentioned the soybean and corn exports. All those exports, for the most part, are from large corporate farms. They're not from family-owned farms like they used to be. And if we cared more about the worker or about the small farmer or about sustainability within communities, then we would be able to see economic growth in a sustainable way, in a way that's possible for the people of Kentucky. But for whatever reason, we've chose to lean into corporatism, and we've chose to love Toyota and love Amazon. And I'm not saying that, I love that we have those factories, but that can't be all we've got going for us, guys. We have got to start putting love into these, these forgotten communities. I rambled. I hope I answered your question.
Well, actually, in line with that question, it does say, for example, energy consumption from renewable energy in Kentucky is 6.3% compared to 12.3% the national average. Mm-hmm. So there's some work to be done in that sector.
Absolutely.
But I did want to also mention, for example, large multinational firms or whatever, especially in farming. Mm-hmm. There has been situation where they would force people to use their seeds or
yes.
And then sue them or sue them even if somehow the seed transferred onto their land even though they didn't specifically plant,
yes.
And then they have so much unlimited money that they keep suing, and these farmers just are getting by and they just can't afford to, go through these lawsuits, and then they end up, just selling the farm and quitting, basically.
Absolutely. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. What is it like? Del Monte, what's the really big... Monsanto, that's what it is. Monsanto, I know, had done a lot, had done that to several small farmers because they had patented, just like you said, they patented the seeds. And then when seeds blow in the wind, like seeds do, like plants were made to do, that's how they grow. And they landed on these, then they were able to sue these farmers, these small local farmers, for patent infringement and put them out of business. It's a tactic that in a different way Amazon deploys a lot to delete competition that is small business. So that is a humongous concern for me. And protections for farmers. These are farms that these people have had their families farm this land for generations of people. And, now they're not able to pay the land, the property taxes because of things like, what we just described.
Mm-hmm. I did want to point out to a kind of bad statistic, and that was the obesity rate in Kentucky is 40.3% compared to the national average. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately did not write down what the national average of that was, but I know that it was
lower.
Big gap between the two.
Right.
What would maybe be some things that we could implement, or laws that could be passed to kind of curb that?
You have the best questions. I love talking about all this stuff. Well, the first thing that this is true for everywhere in America, not just for Kentucky. You guys, we have to have walkable communities. We wake up, we wake up in our beds and walk to our cars and drive to our jobs and stand or sit at our jobs for 8 hours and walk to our car and drive home. And we don't, like, we need more walkable communities. We don't have sidewalks near most roads in pretty much every city in my district. There's very, very limited sidewalks. Even if people want to walk to work, there's no sidewalks. Even if they want to bike to work, there's no bike lanes, and they're having to navigate a bicycle on a major highway. And so what are we going to do about it? We're just going to take a car instead. And so we're missing out on this exercise. We're polluting the planet in the process. So that's my first thing, is how do we implement more walkable spaces? Even if you are in a rural area, like, what can we get near you? Like, we can spend a couple thousand and get a little park with some playground equipment for the kids that they can walk to. That's the first thing I would do, is figure out how to get people outside walking places, biking to places. And the second thing that I would do is address maybe some of the food deserts in rural communities. I mean, in the county that I grew up in, and I'm sure this is probably more true again for Clark County, Montgomery County, this probably isn't as much of an issue with Lexington, Frankfort, Richmond. But in my rural areas, we're going to have people who are 30, 45 minutes, an hour from a grocery store. But what they do have is a gas station down the street that has canned food, processed food. They have Little Debbie cakes, they have soda pops, but what they don't have is fresh produce. And, not even to mention, when we make it to the grocery store, how expensive fresh produce is. We have really incentivized obesity, in my opinion, because in order to have an affordable grocery haul, it's usually not the healthy one. It kind of goes back, wealth inequality. I really feel like that's a huge culprit here.
I'm really glad that you talked about the food as well, and not just the exercise, because there has been a trend by big corporations, food companies, to basically center the conversation around the exercise factor. And, like, for example, Michelle Obama has been, like, she at the beginning was talking more about a comprehensive approach, but over time the food lobbying got in the way, and then it shifted way more into exercise and, like, personal responsibility based on the exercise. One of the things that I am thinking about also is the statistics in relation to Kentucky being a producer of corn, soy, and some of these things, which has been added into food a lot and can also be contributing. So how could possibly how could farming, play a factor?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I mean, I remember my Aunt Susan. If you've not got bored and left yet, you'll love this. My Aunt Susan, she lives, she lives near the town where I grew up. She grows her own garden. Every Thanksgiving we eat her green beans, and she gives me squash. Broccoli, any vegetable you imagine, she grows it in her garden. Potatoes, and she just gives it away to the people that she loves, and she works hard to grow it. And then I get to go home and have produce that just came from the ground that day, with no preservatives, no added, completely organic produce that she has grown herself from seed. And when we support farmers, I mean, not that you're a farmer, Susan, you're not like a laboring farmer, but farmers, I mean, not that you're a farmer, Susan, you're not like a laboring farmer, but the meeting has ended. All right, guys, we might have to, let's take a little break, and then I'll be back in 10 minutes, and we'll answer a couple more questions. But everybody go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, whatever you need to do. Thanks for being here, by the way. All right.